Is making the playoffs actually still possible for these Boston Bruins?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Thursday, March 13th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. It's available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On today's episode, we are going to discuss whether or not it's actually possible for this team to climb back into the playoff picture. They've won 2 games since the trade deadline, and some hope has been renewed here. There's talk about, resolve and working their balls off. Let's see whether or not this is actually possible here by digging into the numbers. We'll also check out a preview tonight's game between the Bruins and the Senators in Ottawa. Before we get into that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. All right, now, as of Thursday morning, the Bruins preparing for their game tonight against the Ottawa Senators, and they are currently 2 points out of a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, 2 points behind the Columbus Blue Jackets for the second wildcard spot. They're also 5 points back of the Ottawa Senators, who currently hold the first wildcard spot. But the thing that is working against them is games remaining. They only have 16 games remaining, whereas the Senators and the Blue Jackets have 18, and teams between Boston and those wildcard spots, namely the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Rangers, and the Detroit Red Wings, they all have 17 games remaining. So the Bruins' playoff probability is actually pretty low. According to Money Puck this morning, they are at 9% chance of making the postseason. According to The Athletic, they are at 3%. No, sorry, that's correct. That's to win that's to get the first overall pick. Their chances of making the playoffs are at 7%. And according to, let's see here, Hockey Reference, their chances of making the playoffs are at 8.5%. So anywhere from 8 to 8.5 to 9%, 7%. That's where the Bruins are at right now. And again, the biggest thing working against them is games remaining. They have the fewest games remaining among teams kind of still hovering around the playoff picture. In terms of point percentage, and that's the amount of points that they have earned so far this season in relation to all possible points. So they've played 66 games. That amounts to 132 possible points so far this season. And they have earned only 68 of those, giving them a point percentage of 51.5%. That's the percentage of points they've earned in relation to all total possible points on the table. The only teams with worse point percentages in the Eastern Conference are the New York Islanders, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Buffalo Sabres. So that means among all the wildcard teams and the other hopefuls, the Bruins have the lowest point percentage, which doesn't bode well for the future. You know what I mean? Like the teams that have that are above them have done more with the opportunities presented to them than the Bruins have so far this season. The Senators have won 4 in a row The Blue Jackets have lost their last game. They're only 5-4-1 over their last 10. The Canadiens won in overtime. They're 6-2-2. Crazy season for them so far. Nobody thought they would be in the middle in a row. So they're coming back down to earth a little bit. The Red Wings won last night, but they're 3-6-1 over their past 10, and the Bruins are 3-5-2. Although they have, of course, won 2 games since the trade deadline. You look since Friday, hey, the Bruins, one of the best teams in the NHL. Very small sample size, of course. Again, if we look at goal differential, I say it all the time, hockey's a fairly simple game. You just want to score more goals than the opposition. And if you are allowing more regularly than you're scoring, then that's not really a recipe for success. The Bruins are at minus 27, and only the Flyers and the Penguins have worse goal differentials. Even the Sabres have a better goal differential than the Bruins, and that's after losing 7-3 last night to the Red Wings. So you add it all up and you see that things aren't looking too good here for the Boston Bruins. And that's, of course, after trading the captain, trading Brandon Carlo, trading Charlie Coyle, trading Trent Frederick, and Justin Brazeau. Now, what could be working in their favor is, of course, some additions. Casey Middlestadt has looked pretty good so far in black and gold. You have Marat Hudnusninov and Jacob Lauko bringing some energy in the bottom 6. You have, of course, Nikita Zadorov, Elias Lindholm as older, newer guys kind of stepping up in the absence of these other leaders. But when it comes down to it, time is kind of running out on this team. They only have 16 games left. They have a bunch of teams to jump over right now to get into the second wildcard spot. They have to leapfrog 4 teams: Detroit, the Rangers, the Canadiens, and the Blue Jackets. And they all have more games remaining than the Bruins do. So are the playoffs possible? Yes. Again, 7% chance, 8.5% chance, 9% chance. But that means there's over a 90% chance that the Bruins will not make the postseason. Now, another thing working in their favor is strength of schedule. And we'll discuss that little nugget here as the podcast continues. So you just realized you need to hire someone yesterday for your business. How can you find amazing candidates fast? It's easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need the right hire, again, like ASAP. The pressure's on. Every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply, but if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. It's available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We've been talking a lot about the Bruins trades, a lot about the Bruins kind of retooling and what it means for the present, for the future. And the reality is, it's unlikely that the Bruins will make the Stanley Cup playoffs. And perhaps that's the plan. Maybe you're out there saying, Ian, we don't even care about the playoffs right now. This team sold a bunch of players. They traded the captain to the Florida Panthers of all teams. And we're just interested in maximizing this sell-off and getting the highest possible draft pick this season, which is totally fair. But as I talk about fewest games remaining, we also have to look at who they're playing. And if you can believe it, the Bruins have the fourth best strength of schedule remaining. And that's looking at all the remaining teams that they have to play and looking at their point percentages. And the Bruins opponents remaining on the schedule have a cumulative point percentage of .532, which is actually tied for third worst among the other teams' remaining opponents. You have St. Louis, whose opponents have a cumulative point percentage of .521. Edmonton's at .530, their opponents. And then you have Washington and Boston with having to play teams at .532. Now, I've said a lot that they do have quite a few road games this month, including tonight's game against the Ottawa Senators. And then they're about to embark on a pretty long Western Conference road trip as well. They'll play Tampa and Buffalo after tonight's game against Ottawa before heading out on that road trip, which will take them to Vegas, the three California teams, and Detroit. So the Bruins have to play teams like, and this is all according to tankathon.com, the top teams they have to play include Washington, Vegas, Carolina, the Kings, the Devils twice, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Don't forget, the Devils are without Jack Hughes. They're without Dougie Hamilton at the moment, so they're not quite as strong, perhaps, as their record would indicate. And then they get to play teams like the Sharks, once again, deep into the tanking season, the Blackhawks, the Sabres, the Penguins, the Ducks, and the Red Wings, although the Red Wings are a bit better position than the Bruins. They're still not really in a strong playoff spot. So to round out the month, the Bruins play the Senators tonight. We'll preview that game later on. The Lightning, two tough teams in the Atlantic Division, both of whom are in a playoff spot, but they just beat Tampa 4-0. The Sabres, of course, just perennially atrocious, can never seem to get it together. Vegas will be a tough game, of course, but then San Jose, the Kings, Anaheim, Detroit, potentially all winnable games there. In April, they'll take on the Capitals, the Canadians, who are a bit of a surprise right now, and the Hurricanes in the first week of April. But then they end the season with 5 pretty winnable games here. Buffalo, New Jersey twice, the Blackhawks, and the Penguins. And again, the Devils, not the team that they were even a few weeks ago when our boy Jack Hughes, not our boy, what am I saying? But when Jack Hughes was healthy. They have won 2 in a row, but they're only 5-5 over their past 10. And they're only 3 points up on Ottawa there. 6 points up on Columbus when it comes to dropping out of the top 3 in the Metro. Columbus has 2 games in hand. So if you're making a case maybe for the Bruins to make the playoffs, it's because of their strength of schedule. Easiest opponents, again, some of the bottom teams in the NHL, the Sharks, the Blackhawks, the Sabres. Twice they get to play the Sabres, the Penguins, and the Ducks. The toughest games, probably, Washington, Vegas, Carolina, Tampa, but they, again, just beat Tampa 4-0 the other day. So, I know Kevin Paul Dupont of the Boston Globe the other day joked that, the Bruins still could get 100 points if they finish the season 18-0-0. They're 2-0 since then. They're not going to go 16-0-0 over the remaining games, but there still is an opportunity for them to take advantage of some somewhat easier opponents and crack the playoff picture. Now, a lot of that is dependent also on how some of the other teams fare. The Red Wings have the hardest remaining schedule with a point percentage among their opponents at .608. The Blue Jackets have a strength of schedule that is ranked sixth hardest at .565. The Canadiens, .553. The Senators, unfortunately, just ahead of the Bruins at .535. But some other teams with some tough schedules as well. The Rangers, and those are all teams ahead of the Bruins. So Detroit, they could pass. They play them twice. Just once. They have a very tough schedule. The Rangers have a top 10 hardest schedule remaining. The Canadiens, 14th. And the Senators are 25th with the Blue Jackets in there at, where's Columbus? Columbus has the 6th toughest schedule. So the Bruins have to take advantage of their business. Those other teams have to fall back, but it's still somewhat possible for the Bruins to make the playoffs because of their strength of schedule. Tonight is a tough one, though. They're taking on the Ottawa Senators, and that's a game we'll preview here as the podcast continues. March Madness is just around the corner, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. And with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Bruins, Senators tonight in Ottawa. Shout out to my sister, always a pain. Texted me yesterday to say, oh, we got tickets to the game. Too bad we didn't plan it. I mean, you've heard the story before. That part of the reason why I really dug into my Bruins fandom as a kid is because she was an Edmonton Oilers fan. They met in the finals in 1990. I really wanted to tick her off. Now she's a Senators fan, and she'll be at the game, and I will not. Now, this is the fourth and final meeting between these two teams this season. Similar to the situation against Florida the other night. Florida had won the first two. Ottawa's won the first two meetings between these two teams, but the last one was a 2-0 shutout for the Bruins in Boston, with Joonas Korpisalo shutting out his former club. Now, Jeremy Swayman has started the last couple games, so perhaps they go to Korpisalo again because he had that success against them, a chance to go up against his former team. But it would be nice to see a Linus Ullmark, Jeremy Swayman matchup in net, seeing as I don't believe they faced off yet, with Ullmark having been injured earlier on this season. Now, the Senators, they're only 5-4-1 over their last 10, but they are coming in hot with 4 straight wins. Not against the best opponents, mind you. They've beaten the Blackhawks in overtime, the Rangers in overtime, Detroit, and Philadelphia in their last 2 wins. The Bruins are 3-5-2, but have won their past two, Tampa and Florida, respectively. A couple pretty impressive games there. Now, one guy that you want to keep an eye on, the Bruins have Casey Middlestadt, and he has been very good so far for this team. A couple assists, still looking for his first goal. Of course, he was a highly touted draft pick of the Buffalo Sabres back in the day. Not even back in the day, like 8 years ago. Another highly touted draft pick of the Buffalo Sabres was recently traded to the Ottawa Senators, and that's Dylan Cozens. Cozens was drafted, in the top 10, 7th overall in 2019, and he has been an instant contributor for this team, scoring 2 goals, adding 1 assist for 3 points in his first 3 games with the Senators, including the game winner the other night against the Flyers. So that is going to be an interesting matchup. Cozens, who was drafted in 2019, going up against Casey Middlestadt, who was supposed to be another part of the Sabres' future. He was drafted 8th overall in 2017, and he's got a 2-point streak going in his own right as a member of the Boston Bruins, still looking for his first goal. Jake Sanderson, red hot for the Senators. Of course, he of Team USA notoriety, who replaced Charlie McAvoy in the lineup after he was injured. He's got 8 points, all assists over the last 5 games. Brady Tkachuk with 5 goals over his past 5 games. It'll be his first game in Boston since that heartbreak for Team USA against Team Canada. David Pastrnak with 5 assists, 6 points over his last 5 games. Morgan Geekie leading the way with 3 goals over that stretch. Jeremy Swayman, an .899 save percentage, looking to get that back over 900 before the end of the season. That would be really nice. Korpisalo at .894. Linus Ullmark has been playing very well for the Senators as of late. .913 save percentage. And again, it would be really cool to see that Ullmark-Swayman matchup tonight. Now, when it comes to under or stats for these two teams, Senators power play ranked 14th. Their penalty kill is ranked 19th. The Bruins have raised their penalty kill up to 20th. So very similar there. Power play still rolling at only 29th, but it has looked pretty good as of late with some of these new additions, primarily Middlestadt, who got that big assist on the power play the other night on David Pastrnak's goal to kickstart the comeback for the Bruins, as well as Hudnustidov. It looks pretty good out there as well on the power play. The second unit was looking really good. Now, Mason Lohrei as well. Taking advantage of those injuries to Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm and really setting himself up as the power play quarterback for this team. Senators rank 17th in goals per game, 2.88. They do have a top 10 defense, allowing only 2.81 goals per game. Again, scoring more than you allow, key to success. The Bruins scoring 2.71 goals per game, allowing 3.11, ranked 26th and 22nd, respectively. Going back to that goal differential thing, you look at the teams currently in the playoff spots in the Eastern Conference, they're all above 0 in terms of goal differential. All the teams outside of the playoff picture are under 0. So that tells you how important it is to score more goals than the other team. In the West, it should be noted, there's only 6 teams with positive goal differentials, 10 with negative goal differentials. So not tracking the same out there, but in the East, it's playing right into that very key stat, which is so simple, but it's true. So tonight, the goal, score more goals than the Ottawa Senators. Could be, an emotional one with Ullmark going up against Swayman, potentially. But if the Bruins want to make the playoffs, which I believe the players still do, then they're going to need to bring their best effort here tonight, and also take advantage of. They're going to have to beat those bad teams, but they're also going to have to beat the teams ahead of them in the standings, and that begins tonight against the Ottawa Senators. On tomorrow's podcast, we'll be back with a full recap, bring you all the latest on the black and gold. Be sure to check out the Locked On NHL podcast next. Local insights from our experts on a league-wide perspective. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Happy Thursday. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.